Welcome to the All Metal Mode podcast with your host, Michael Hare. Tune in every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern with co-host Gypsy Jules, and every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern with Matt Hoffman as we talk to guests, discuss metal detectors, equipment, and everything treasure related. Feel free to join in the discussion in the chat room during the show, and please, if you like what you hear, we'd appreciate you taking a moment to hit that like button and share the link with your friends. We hope you enjoy the show. The All Metal Mode podcast starts right now.
Hello, everybody. This is Mike Hare, and you're listening to the All Metal Mode podcast. Of course, Mr. Dorian Cook will be co-hosting the show with me tonight, as always on Tuesdays, and looking forward to it. Sorry we're starting late. We were having I was having technical issues with my computer. Luckily, I think we're okay. We're going to try to get through it. We were having some issues that I think cleared out, but I'm still running pretty slow here, so hopefully it'll come back. You can find us on Facebook at All Metal Mode, as well as All Metal Mode Podcast UK if you'd like to join either one of our Facebook groups. All Metal Mode is every Monday and Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and All Metal Mode UK is every Thursday at 8 p.m. GMT or 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, you guys know, to the regular listeners, Monday night we've got Matt Hoffman, Gypsy Jules, and Amanda, I believe it's Digaz. And, you know, that's the lineup right now, but that's going to change eventually, I believe. We're going to do a little bit of change up, but for good. It'll be a good thing to do, and so keep an eye out for that. And, every Tuesday night is myself and Dorian. You can listen to us on Spreaker. Right now we are live. If you click on the rectangle box at the bottom with the pause and play button, then once you click on that, you'll see like a cloud. If you click on that, you can join us in chat. We always have some really great conversations. It's worth doing. If you know anybody that like to listen to the show, please tell them there's several ways you can do it. You can listen to us anytime on Spreaker. You can catch shows, the old shows, the archives. You can download us and listen on the go from Spreaker. You can go to iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube. We've got many places you can catch us. Dirt Digest magazine, the September issue is out. It's a free online magazine, so check us out. It's dirtdigestmagazine.com. I think this issue has been the best one. There's been some great articles. We have some really good people writing monthly, Dorian Cook being one of them. He writes a heck of an article. We're always looking for more articles, and if you need help with those articles or ideas, get a hold of me. Let me know. We will help any way we can. Monthly, we also do submit your finds, and it's send us a couple pictures and a short, a small paragraph about how you found it or what it is, or whatever you want to do. Just a small paragraph, kind of explaining what you got there. This month we are running a contest, actually two contests. I decided to do. It's Halloween. It's a great time of year for ghost stories and stuff like that, and so we're looking for articles. If you've had an experience that involves metal detecting, anything paranormal or odd or whatever, we are giving away. You'll get a Dirt Digest magazine dig towel and a decal. Now, if you submit an article and we put it in the magazine, then you're put in for we're going to do a drawing or not a drawing. I'm sorry. We're going to ask our listeners to pick their favorite article, and you will get the same stuff with a pen pointer, a Garrett AT, the Pro Pointer AT. Yeah, that's what it is. So that's the first one. The second one is if everybody who submits a find or finds from a hunt will be put in. We're going to ask the readers what's their favorite, and you'll get a dig towel and a decal. So if you want to get in on that, you can go to Dirt Digest Magazine Facebook group. You can go to my Facebook page. I've announced it in all metal mode, so it's definitely that's definitely out there, and you can see the rules and everything else. So yeah, good time. Okay, let me find my button here. Boy, I'm having all kinds of issues. My computer's still running slow, but hopefully we can get through this. How you doing, Dorian?
Hey, Mike. Hey, listen, wanted to ask you on something you just said there. You said that your listeners were going to pick the winning article. Did you mean readers of Dirt Digest rather than listeners?
Yeah, obviously. I apologize.
Okay,
the reader, the folks who read the magazine will have an opportunity to pick their favorite article, along with the readers will get a chance to pick their favorite submitted find. So yeah, good catch there.
Okay. Well, between the two of us, we make one pretty good man, don't we?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah. Dorian, if you don't mind, since we're starting late, nobody's here. They probably all thought we weren't going to do it. So if you can take over the show, let me get it posted on Facebook that we are live, and I'll spread the word, and hopefully we'll get some people coming in and listening to the show.
Okay. Well, after some discussion between Mike and I today, there's an area involving metal detecting that we thought would be a good subject to discuss and might be really beneficial, at least to some of you. In fact, it could be a major benefit to some of you. We wanted to talk about financing, if you want to call it your hobby, since most of us are engaged in an amateur way. We're not living at it. You know, we're not professionals. You know, I was a professional landscape construction guy, but I am no longer because I don't make my living at it anymore.
Hey, Dorian, I apologize. I hate to cut you off, but let me say something before. There's something I wanted to say before we get started on this.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen it or if you've been around. I know you kind of stay in your own little corner and do your own thing. You know, I will tell you, things have kind of changed over the years. Selling your finds is often looked down. That's not what we're talking about, is it?
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I apologize. Dorian, when the computer's messed up and we're running late, I get all crazy in my head. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, well, folks, maybe you can cast your vote on whether or not we should have Mike Hare screened for early Alzheimer's.
It's not Alzheimer's. What it is it's kids. It's there's got to be something that kids cause, so we could check that out.
We'll call it Kidsheimer's disease. Okay. All right, well, anyway, we know that as the years have passed, detectors have gotten more expensive. And quite frankly, there's another factor, a major factor in the detector buying market, and that is for the average American household, the buying power of the dollar is eroding away. I don't want to get into, I'm not going to talk politics. This is not about a party or anything, but this idea that, inflation is virtually non-existent or is only 1.1% or 2% a year, Folks, I don't know what world that is happening on, but it's not this one. My wife and I are on a retirement income, and so we're very careful about budget. And we're watching various food items take sudden increases of 30% or more. Now, this is all going to tie in with our subject, so just bear with me a minute. Now, I don't know anybody's income in my circle of friends that's going up 25 or 30% a year. In many cases, people are doing good just to keep their income level from going down, much less advancing. So we have a problem in that the value of our money is being eroded away. To give you an idea, this process has never stopped since the history of our country began. It's accelerated at times during periods of World War and so on. But in 1861, the beginning of the Civil War, one of those big, large, beautiful, large cents you like to find, did you know that 1 penny would buy a loaf of bread? What does it take to buy a day-old loaf of cheap bread now? What, about 250 pennies? What does that tell you about what's happened to the value of our money? So we have the reality that we're dealing with. We're dealing with accelerating inflation. We really are. The cost of housing, the cost of cars. I've got a good friend that might be listening, and he and I grew up in different worlds. He's a younger man, and I say different worlds because I was complimenting him on this beautiful vehicle that he drives, this big, fancy pickup truck. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's got all the bells and whistles on it. And I commented to him, boy, this must have set you back a few pennies. And he looked at me and sincerely said to me, I only owe $28,000 on it. And I, quite frankly, have owned a few new vehicles in my life, but I never came close to paying $28,000 total for a vehicle, much less owing that much on one. And, we become conditioned where people are seeing $75,000 pickups as a normal thing. It's not normal, folks. It's really, really inflationary. I remember when I started my business in 1972, my landscape business, I bought a brand new 1-ton dump truck from International Harvester. And it was beautiful, bright fire engine red and all that. And it was my first new vehicle I ever owned. And folks, I want to tell you, it was $4,000. And I thought that was all the money in the world back then. So the point is, in the years ahead, you're not going to see the rate of inflation fall off. It's going to get worse. Now, how do I know that? I'm not a financial expert. No, but I have common sense. And you and I and everybody listening are in the same boat. We all have to pay our bills. Well, we have a government that's not paying its bills. It's operating on credit. Our national debt is growing by leaps and bounds. Nobody has a program for seriously addressing it or reducing it. It's talked about a little bit, but the fact is, we are at an all-time record deficit in the in the tens of trillions of dollars. And it took us, 230 years just to rack up $1 trillion in debt. And then one president that we had, recent president, he quadrupled that in his 8 years in the White House. And that's pretty amazing. But the point is, folks, you borrow money, you've got to pay interest on it. So the loan is much more than just the principal you borrow. And we're barely able to keep up with the interest on the national debt. Some of you may have seen this clock that shows the national debt, and it moves so fast, it changes, it increases in amount as you watch it in almost a blurry speed. So since there is no plan in place to address all of this incredible amount of debt that the United States government is running up, inflation has to go up. It has to. It's historical. There's no way around it. So as this happens, if we're going to continue in our hobbies and we're going to, keep updated with the best metal detecting equipment that's available, then we need to talk about and think about how to make our hobby pay at least to cover our expenses. Now, I'm not saying you have to, turn it into a business and work full time in it and that type of thing. Although I have hunted treasure professionally for 2 years straight. That's all I did for a living. And might have continued doing that with the exception that we had some family situations come up that had to be dealt with, and those kind of distracted for a couple years. Anyway, to finance and cover our expenses, it's just like we were talking about. We were trying to put together a little group hunt for our relic hunting group. And by the time, we've got a lot of these guys are working 2 jobs. And by the time they get a day or 2 off, and then they drive 3 or 4 or 5, 600 miles to the hunt site, and now they've got restaurant food and they've got motel expenses and everything. And even though we're charging a very, very small fee just to cover a short-term lease on the property from the landowner, like $25 a person, it gets to be a little much for a lot of folks. And, there's a tendency in the American population to just go in debt for whatever you want. It's a fault that's found in the younger couples, younger people, than it is a lot less in the older people because we've been through hard times. My wife and I have experienced losing our land, home, cars, credit, everything, going from A1 credit, making several $1,000s a week in our business and seeing all that wiped out simply because a group called OPEC on the other side of the big pond dropped the price of oil to $8 a barrel, and they destroyed the Texas economy and the 4 states around it that were all oil-producing states, and it boomeranged into construction and everything else. And we experienced getting caught in a 7-year depression where there just wasn't any work and there wasn't any income. And if you couldn't survive by selling off whatever assets you had that you didn't need, an extra truck, an extra boat, stuff like that, and you had to take a lot less than it was originally worth even to get any money at all during that time. But if you couldn't survive by doing that, you didn't survive, and we didn't. We had to leave Texas and come back up north to an area that wasn't afflicted to survive. So we know what tough times are like. But I want to talk about, thinking about what are your actual expenses first off when you detect. If you have replaceable batteries, then you've got to figure in battery expense. How many hours do you get out of a set of batteries? How many hours detecting are you doing a month? That'll give you an idea of how many batteries you're going to need that month. There's, you have to figure your gas and the wear and tear on your car going to and from hunts. When we lived in Texas, it wasn't such a problem as long as times were good, the economy was good, the business was doing well. And I, quite frankly, most of the time had to drive a minimum of 250 miles to get to a good Civil War site. Now, I had some really great sites, but, every one of them was at least a 500-mile round trip, and many of them went into the 700-800-mile round trip. And so that was expense. There was, I had to plan on what to do. Was I going to camp, or was I going to stay in a motel? What was I going to do? Do I bring my own food? Do I eat in a restaurant? See, all of those things have to be calculated. Now, how can we make our metal detecting cover our expenses that are accrued in pursuing it? Well, there's a number of different ways. A lot of people that say, "Oh, I'd never sell anything that I find." Well, and that's your right, but you might be smarter to make up a bucket list of finds and say, "These I will never sell. These are for display. These are the ones I've got bragging rights on." And maybe some of your common finds like zinc pennies and clad quarters, all of that could go into a fund towards your next metal detector or towards gas on your next trip that you're going to take to another state to hunt a site. These coins and things, I found probably, I'm not a coin hunter in the truest sense of the word, but I've probably found 170,000 coins or more. And I have all my really nice coins, my silver coins that have significant dates and things. They're all, in little envelopes and mounted in albums and things like that, and displayed in display cases. So I certainly have not by any means used, all of the silver I found, for example, to buy my metal detecting equipment. But that being said, I don't have a problem at all with spending my clad quarters, and my new nickels and clad dimes, zinc pennies, even common wheat pennies that are not key dates. I might be persuaded to part with. Right. People say, well, they're worth more than a penny, and I understand that. But actually, what something is worth is what you're able to get for it, not what the book says. We tell people on the Arrowhead identification and pricing books that contain amazing prices on certain arrowheads and things. Well, I just tell people, figure 25 to 50% of that price if you sell a find that, similar to that one. And you will be in the realistic ballpark.
Hey, Dorian, real quick, I wanna cut in. We're getting bad feedback, real bad feedback. Hold on. I don't know why we got the feedback issue again. I would say this: when I was detecting, didn't have kids, and I was going out, at least every other day, hours and hours. The last thing that I was looking for was clad. Okay, very last thing on my list. I would avoid clad at all cost. If I'd hunted the site a little bit and I knew that the old coins were deep, I would stay at deep. I'd pass up a dime at 2 inches, knowing it's clad. If there's no fill dirt and you get what I'm saying. And it was nothing to find $100 worth of clad. Now, I know of a few different people who they enjoy just metal detecting clad. I even know of an old timer that goes to parks and schools and just finds clad. If you want to go look for clad, you can make a couple $1,000s. You find the right sites, the right places, and it's pretty easy to do. I've heard of it being done, and I'm talking like in a summer. I'm not talking about even a full year. I mean, you gotta factor in winter and stuff, but I'm talking spring to fall and finding, 1,500 up of just clad. And what also tends to happen is you tend to find you're going to stumble across gold. So now you got a gold ring, a gold necklace, or something like that, and those can be sold off as well. So it was, like I said, when I was at it hardcore and could do it and didn't have a little rugrat running around, it was a guy that did everything possible to avoid clad would still walk away with 100 and sometimes more than that in a season. So because you don't find it field hunting. You're not going to, you might find one, a clad coin every now and then that somehow got dropped on the site. But, the sites that I field hunt, they were tore down before modern coins like that. So,
Right.
You just don't find them. But it's, I think that's a great place to start. And I know you've got some other good ones coming up of ways to make money. And
I want to make the point, Mike, that you're not your average metal detectorist. I'm talking basically for our newer people and our people that are struggling to get good equipment. Some are trying to metal detect with $200 or $300 units, and they're finding some coins and things. So what we want to talk about is how to take those cheap units, for example, and use them to step up to a more expensive, better detector.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're saying is right along those lines in terms of the clad. But you said something I thought was very significant, Mike, when you said that, you could find a couple $1,000s in clad a year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, that couple $1,000s could be found, because clad is shallow. It's not deep unless the soil's been turned over, obviously. Mm-hmm. So, a Garrett Ace, a $200 or $300 detector from one of the major manufacturers is going to find that clad.
Yes.
And, if you're patient and you're able to get out and hunt these sites, finding the clad may not be what you want to do. Maybe you'd rather be digging Civil War mini balls, or you'd rather be out hunting with Mike Hare in the field and digging seeded coins all the time. But, maybe to do that, you're going to need, you go out and hunt with Mike Hare, you don't want to be out there in those fields hunting with a $200 detector, because now we're getting into what I call the high value, high dollar coin type of sites. And you want a really good detector because it will pay off for you, because you're going to be looking for deep coins, right, Mike?
Well, you gave a bad example. Let me explain this. This is one of the great things about field hunting. So if you want to get into the hobby and you can learn how to research and find the houses that were in fields that are now gone, you can do it with a $160 Tesoro Compadre and be very successful. And here's why. It's an analog detector. Most of your finds aren't going to be deep. What I think Dorian's trying to say, what example he's trying to give is parks, schools, house sites, that kind of stuff. You're going to need a more expensive detector to reach the deep silver. That's more what you were talking about, right?
Well, Mike, I do a lot of field hunting myself, and when you pull out a 3-cent silver piece that's 6 inches deep, you'd better have a good detector. You're not even going to hear it.
You're right, but here's the thing: in most cases, they still deep plow every 5 years or so, and that stuff gets turned up. Your biggest problem is working through the iron, not depth. I mean, I've found large scents laying on top of the ground. I found Matt's seeded half dime that he found with me last year was literally laying on top of the ground. You need something that'll fight through the iron more than anything. Yeah, with a $160 detector, you're not going to get the deepest finds, but there's going to be plenty enough for you to pick out of there and come away with some really good finds. Where if you want to find silver coins and you've got a $200 detector, I personally do not know a $200 detector that's going to go. In my experience in Ohio, if you want silver, you need 6 to 10 inches is where they lay.
Yeah, but we're getting a little distracted off the point. The point is, use your cheap detector to go after what you can get to readily, which is your shallow clad.
Yes.
Because you can walk off of a site for 2 hours hunting with $5 or $6, and you keep repeating that and doing that. You're going to start getting a substantial savings towards that new and better metal detector.
Yeah, I know a guy that had a family, a couple kids, and couldn't. He wanted to. His goal was he wanted to find deep silver coins, and he couldn't afford a detector. He did his research and found out. Well, he bought. I don't recall now what he bought, but he bought $200 or less name brand detector. And in a season, he had found enough to go buy an Explorer SE, which at the time I think was somewhere around $1,200. Now, there was some gold in there. I think he'd found a couple rings and a necklace that he was able to scrap. So, yeah, I see people quite often on social media saying, I really want that detector. I can't afford it. I can't. It's not that you can't afford it. You don't have the drive to go get it. Because there's other ways, you can, guys that have $200, $300, even $400 detectors that'll do what they want, or can go find the clad and save up and get that money in a season. And they can afford that detector, but instead they say, I wish I could afford that. I can't afford that. Well, there's a way to work up to that if that's what you want.
Okay. No, I'm just waiting to make sure you completed your comment.
Yep, I'm done.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and there's what we want to talk about too. Another way. The clad coinage, the easy to get through stuff. Remember, people are constantly losing money. So, you can go to the volleyball pit at the local park or whatever, and you can go back a week later and find more, and so on and so on. So, even though it's not rare coins, it is money, and it is a renewable resource in the sense that as long as people are going to that location, more money is going to be lost, more rings, more jewelry, that type of thing. Now, there's another way to do this. I'll give you an example. We have a little town near me, a county seat, kind of a junk shop. I say junk shop. I don't mean really bad junk, but old stuff, some new stuff. You can buy a new pocket knife in there, or you can buy an old shovel, that's 50 years old and needs a new handle. It covers the whole gamut. Walked in one day and there was a Garrett H350 detector leaning against a counter. And I said, what do you want for that? Is it working? He said, oh, yeah, it's working. So I picked it up, turned it on, checked it out. It was working perfectly, looked brand new. And I said, so what do you want for it? And the guy looked at me and he says, I'm going to have $60 for that detector. And I said, well, I kind of like to keep it down to 50. He says, okay, you can have it for 50. So I bought the Garrett H350 for $50 and turned right around and sold it to a friend who wanted to get into metal detecting and was moaning and groaning over how expensive detectors were. I sold it to him for $120. So I made a $70 profit on it. He was thrilled with the price. Everybody was happy. The guy that sold it to me, I was happy with the price I got, and the guy that bought it was happy with his price. And you can also find buys like that in pawn shops. Like I said, junk stores, you'd be amazed where metal detectors turn up for sale. And most of the time, when they're not associated with people who are metal detecting, they don't know the real value of them. And if they can get anywhere from $50 to $100, then they think they've made a good deal. So another, that would be a way, treasure hunt the pawn shops and the junk shops and buy up detectors that are cheap, that are of good brand and in good condition, and resell them. Put them on Craigslist, whatever, eBay. I never had to worry about buying detectors when I worked for Garrett. My detectors were furnished free. I always had top of the line. After I left and was no longer associated, I had a number of companies contact me, wanted me to test their metal detectors, write reports on them, and in return they would give me the detector. So I ended up with 11 or 12 detectors. Mike knows what that's all about. He's in the same situation to a large degree. And I just got used to not having to pay retail for my detectors. And of course, the discounters come along, and they offer you a discount off the suggested retail price. But that's not even good enough for me. I when I bought my Fisher 1266 and my Fisher CZ6, I went on eBay and I bought them from two guys who had, one of them had used the 1266 that had 2 hours of use on it, and the CZ6 had 3 hours of use. And I bought one for $250 and one for $320. And I had extra coils with it. And they still had the warranty on them. They were like new when I got the machines. They really were. And I used them quite a few years, found thousands of coins and artifacts with them. Still have those detectors. They're still working. But anyway, that's the way I like, personally, to buy detectors. There's a tendency, those who have not been around the block too many times, so to speak, in the detecting world, just to say, well, here's this XYZ 300 XT, and it is $1,670, and that's what I got to come up with if I'm going to get this detector. And there's no real effort made to find one that maybe somebody has bought and wants to get rid of, and they're willing to, take $1,000 bill for it instead of $1,650, or take a $500 bill even. Sometimes you have to be patient, but it's just like hunting those old coins. You don't go out and dig a rare coin every time you go out, but if you keep going out, you eventually find some coins that are worth some money. Well, the same thing is with metal detectors, used detectors that are almost new. Sincerely, if you can get a $1,500 metal detector, even if it was say a Mine Lab that's 2 or 3 years old and they've got newer models out, step up to that, and then use things that you find from stepping up to that. Start building your fund for the next detector, the next step up, and in between, when you don't have the money to buy that detector, keep researching it, watch videos of people that use it, find out how people are doing with it, what they say is negative, what they say is positive, and use that information to make a final determination that that's really the detector that you're saving for. That's really the one you want to buy. Because what you don't want to do, and I see this happening, Mike, and I know you do too, we're getting situations where we've got people that are changing detectors every 3 or 4 months.
Right.
And that is absolutely not time to ever learn the capabilities of a good metal detector. There's no way to get enough hours in those 3 or 4 months to where you could call yourself really, really proficient on the operation of that unit. You can say at the end of 3 or 4 months, well, I don't like this unit. But you're basing that decision or that attitude, opinion, on a unit that you don't even know fully what it will do or how to use it properly. Now, you may know enough about it to put it in a factory set pre-mode, coins or whatever, and go out and find a little stuff. And you may have, there are some legitimate complaints. For example, you use a detector 3 or 4 months, and it's forcing you to twist your arm or your wrist, and it's starting to get sore on you. You may have a valid reason right there to say, well, hey, this is not comfortable. This is not going to work for me, swinging all day long, in the future. I need something that's more comfortable. But when it comes to the electronics and what they do, well, I've learned from our group page, listen to these guys that have built their own detectors, listening to their technical talk, people like Keith Wills. With every control you add to a metal detector, you increase the learning curve. Right, Mike? Are you there, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm getting feedback, so I keep muting. But yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Anyway, so just say, first off, be cautious about being too quick to get rid of a metal detector. I didn't like the CZ6 at all when I first got it. But as the hours began to build on it and I used it, then I began to see the value of it. And I saw where I could do better with it in certain areas than I could my 1266. But the 1266, I loved that detector from the start. It was well balanced, easy to swing all day, and it produced. It produced for me. So, but we're talking, Mike knows about this. We've been having a discussion about analog versus digital. And I never had a lot of experience with the Tesoro metal detectors. But I've heard a lot of good things about them, and I know guys that have really, really done well. I know guys that have found over 500,000 coins in a year with a Tesoro. Now, granted, I wouldn't say these were, deep-seated silver coins per se. Not that you don't get some fairly deep coins, but they're lightweight, comfortable, easy to operate. They go by tone only, and they'll find a lot of coins if you're in an area where coins have been lost. So I'm not necessarily going to approach this from analog or digital. That's a subject for a whole show discussion, I think, Mike. But we want to think about creative ways to build our detecting expense fund, whether it's a detector, whether it's for the gas to go somewhere or the money to buy the restaurant food and the motel or whatever it is. We want to figure out ways to increase that fund without having to come out of the household budget. That's an absolute no-no. If you're having to take money from your household budget to finance your metal detecting, you're not being wise. You need to keep that money in your household budget and find another source. Now, there's things like saving aluminum cans, scrap metal. A lot of guys will save all the lead they find. And I have a bucket that I put all my brass fittings, because you find brass plumbing fittings on these old house sites. Pieces of copper pipe, even copper wire, old heavy copper wire. All of that can be sold for scrap. Know a fellow in the Cincinnati area that sells about $3,000 a year in scrap lead and brass that he finds while metal detecting. Now, see, that right there would finance your next detector. That means once a year you could buy a new detector. Mike, you got anything that my comments are?
I think it's great. I think that's a great point. I'll tell you, I've never been one to really save my scrap, but what I used to do in Ohio, because I used to find so much of it, is I had a couple buddies, and then I ended up having one that really took it. I'd give it to him to scrap because he'd save all his, and then once a year. But looking back, I probably gave away at least hundreds of dollars worth of scrap, because you're right. You'll find on them old house sites, you'll find a lot of copper fittings or brass fittings. I mean, and copper pipe, copper wire. That all adds up. Get you a 5-gallon bucket for each one in the garage. And even pop cans, I mean, they'll add up. You got your smashed 5-gallon bucket of aluminum. Take it in when you take all your other scrap, and it can definitely add up. I think that's that's something I hadn't even thought about tonight. But you can definitely make some money scrapping that.
Another way to make some money is to put a little classified ad in your small county newspapers. We'll pay cash for used metal detectors. Call me, and phone number. You're not saying how much, or you're not saying that you'll buy every one. You're just saying that you will pay cash for used metal detectors. You're going to get some real bargains. You're going to get some people that are really in need, and they're going to take a quick cash offer, $50, $60 on a $500-$600 metal detector. And anytime you can buy one of those for $50, if you can't turn it for $120 to $150, you're not trying. And you could make a little side business. It would take very little time actually. And there's a little classified ad, we'll pay cash for used metal detectors. It's not going to cost you very much. You can get a monthly rate from your local county newspaper, a few dollars. And there's another way to build your treasure hunting fund. So what you got to do, though, is you got to put that mind to work. You got to think creatively, just like you have to think creatively when you're looking for good sites to hunt. If you're just driving down the road and you see an old house out in the field along the main highway and you go ask permission, what you're probably going to hear is, oh, yeah, it's been worked to death. People have been hunting that for 30 years because human nature follows the path of least resistance, see? So you got to be creative, and you got to say, okay, this area was settled in, let's see, history says this area was settled as late, like along the James River in Virginia. They were in there in the early 1600s. Wow, that sounds like an area, that would really be great to look for old coins and look for old house sites that are long gone back in the woods. And since there were houses there in the early 1600s, I'll guarantee you there's a lot of them. There's not a trace left except maybe a little piece of a stone wall out in the middle of the woods, piece of a foundation or something like that. So, one of the problems we have in our society, we're being deprived of our ability to think. I just got an update on one of my computer programs called PowerPoint. And I'm a graphics artist, and I can design anything just about logos, I can Photoshop pictures. I can do all of this stuff. And I don't need my computer suddenly popping up, taking over 2/3 of my screen and telling me, here's some design ideas for you. See, it's trying to do my thinking for me. All I need is to have that feature in the computer and know that if I feel like I need help from my computer, I can go there and tell it, okay, give me some design ideas. This thing, it just pops up and takes over your screen and forces you to deal with it. Well, that's just one example. That's happening in the computer world, in the phone world, and it's all designed to make us a non-thinking people. We just are like robots. We're told what to do, and we do it. So, if you'll begin to think about how can I, come up with a way to make some extra money to create a metal detecting fund, you'll come up with those ideas. And, some of them you may want to share with the rest of us, this type of thing. And others, you may want to keep to yourself because you found a little niche. But, it's the same thing that will lead a person to unworked sites. It's the same kind of determination and thinking and research that will do that, will also provide you a way to create a metal detecting fund that will, within a short period of time, we're talking 6 months to a year, begin paying all of your expenses metal detecting. Now, even if you don't, want to make a living metal detecting, it will be giving you enough things enough money, so that you can buy your digging tools, you can buy your detector, you can fill your car with gas if you're going to drive 200 miles to hunt a Civil War site or something. And at the same time, it will allow you to keep the good things you find that you don't want to sell. But the things like we were talking about, scrap lead, scrap brass, zinc pennies, clad quarters, clad dimes, nickels, so on. Even there are sites where you could even sell costume jewelry that's in good condition if you dig it. And toy cars. I've dug up, everybody that metal detects. Mike, how many dozens of toy cars do you think you dug?
Oh, I couldn't even begin to imagine. A bunch.
Yeah, and they come in all kinds of conditions. Some of them are broken, some of them are perfect, but the paint's kind of dinged. I'd say probably if I went through all of my dug toy cars and trucks and things, about 15 to 20%, if I were to clean them up, probably soak them in a bucket of what I call Dawn water, just water with Dawn dishwashing detergent, and then go over them with a toothbrush, let them dry, and then spray paint them, different colors. You could put them on eBay, say vintage cars or vintage toys for sale. And, I seriously looked at possibly getting into a business of buying and selling vintage toys. And I know there's an awful lot of that moves on eBay, an awful lot. I've seen people that on eBay, that's all they deal in is vintage toys, plastic and metal toys, and they have like 20 or 30,000, what do they call it, when you like their, I've forgotten the term. No, like the back of my hand.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
It's like a like, on eBay, if you have a good experience, but they don't call it a like.
Feedback.
Feedback. Thank you. And they have 20 or 30,000 feedbacks, which means they've had that many sales at least. So, again, there's a lot of, you have to have a bit of an entrepreneur mentality.
Hey, Dorian, I know you're going to get to it, but Jeff Urey asked, let me see exactly what he asked. What about selling your metal detecting service?
Very good. I think that's an excellent topic, and I would like to focus on.
You told me the best idea ever, so I'm looking forward to that. He's got some great stories, and I've got a little story to add in there as well. Before we do that, I'll wait till the end. Go ahead. I'll let you go first, and then I got a part to add. So go ahead.
Okay. I know a dealer he's had to retire because of age. He's in his 80s now. He's worked for the phone company, and he sold White's metal detectors in the Cincinnati area. And he had business cards printed, and he handed them out to utility companies and construction companies. We'll locate underground pipes and wires and things. And he made thousands and thousands of dollars doing that. He also put ads in, have you lost a valuable piece of jewelry? I will find it with my metal detector, for, a certain fee or something like that or whatever. And that succeeded for him also. But probably the most profitable selling of your services that I've ever heard of is to have a nice business card printed up, make sure it's professional looking. If you're not a good designer, get somebody who is, because as the old saying goes, you only get one chance to make a good first impression. So your business card will be what will give them an impression of you. And that's why I tell people, when they brag, say, look, I got these business cards for $10. And I say, yeah, that's too bad. You should have spent $100. I don't necessarily spend $100, but I spend $50 or $60 for 500 cards. I want my business cards to look good. But anyway, what they did was they passed them out in this one big city. They passed them out to the insurance companies and said, if you have a situation where you think there might be valuables, jewelry or money hidden in a deceased client's estate that you would like to find, before you settle in regards to the insurance, we'll search the house for you for 20% of the value of anything found. And they got an amazing amount of responses from several big insurance companies and who used them again and again and again. And these guys absolutely cleaned up. One house they did was a dentist's house. He was wealthy by the time he retired, lived in a mansion, but he became a reclusive hermit, and he let trees and weeds grow up in the yard around his mansion right up to the house. There was no yard, no grass anymore. It was like woods all the way up to the sides of his house, all the way around. And after he died, when the guys went in there to do the search, the two partners, they found 3 55-gallon drums of silver dollars to start right away. And then they found stacks of $100 bills in the refrigerator. And there were stacks of newspapers almost to the ceiling in all the rooms with just pathways that you could walk between the stacks. And one of the guys knocked some newspapers off the top of one of the stacks by accident, and 3 $100 bills fell out of it on the floor. And they began to realize that this guy had hidden $100 bills in all of these stacks of newspapers. Talk about a job, but they went through them, each newspaper, and they pulled out, I forget how many tens of thousands of dollars in cash. Anyway, he told me that by the time they got done with that one house, that estate, including what the guy had buried in the ground outside, they found over $475,000. And their take was 20% of that. So that's pretty amazing, Now, granted, not all your finds are going to be that big. Some of the clients you may not find anything, but that is a particular skill, and the more you do, the better you'll get. So if I were going to do that, I wouldn't call it a failure if I didn't find anything major the first 6 or 7 attempts. By the time you've searched 6 or 7 houses inside and outside, though, you ought to start getting pretty good at that. And that is one of those things. You see, the insurance company's not going to call you in unless they're pretty suspicious that there's something to be found. That there's unexplained wealth that's unaccounted for, or wealth that's unexplained as to where it is or what happened to it. So I think these guys were telling me on one particular deal, the whole backyard, it was a small backyard, and they pulled something like 127 mason jars full of silver coins, and a few had gold coins in them.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it really is. And this is real life. This is real treasure hunting, but it's a type of treasure hunting that most people don't even know about. And Mike, I've never even seen an article written on it. That's something that would make a great article for.
Sorry, I was fumbling around here. Yeah, no, I never have either, and you're right. It'd make a great article. I think, you know a lot more about it than me. I think you ought to think about it.
Yeah, I need to talk to the guys that I know. One of the two guys I can get access to. the partners and see if he'll if he'll give me enough information to write an article. I mean, I need to get the facts down because I'm working from memory of stories that he told me. But I'd like to sit down, interview him, and get everything in apple pie order. But that would be a good possibility. And I really don't think there's very many people even exploiting that at all. In all over the United States.
I've had mixed luck with it in the past, but you can also, I think you mentioned it, but you can make money locating property stakes. I was out just a few months ago. I was at an old school, and somebody pulled up alongside the road, and there was a fence there. Well, excuse me, I knew he wanted to talk to me, so I took off my headphones, started walking towards him, and he said, "Would that thing locate property stakes?" And I said, "Yeah, it will." And I was honest about it. I said, "I've had mixed results." And he said, "How much would it cost to have you come out to my mom's house, and do it?" Well, I told him nothing. It's no. I said, "Well, where's your mom live?" And he said, "Just right down the road." I said, "It wouldn't cost you anything." And he said, so he gave me his card, and he said, "Well, when you got a moment," I said, "I don't today." Steph and the kids were with us and with me, and Steph had to go to work before too long. Well, I had the time messed up, so she had more time than I thought, so I called the guy, and I said, "Yeah, I can come out and do it now." I didn't realize that I had my wife's schedule messed up, and so I went out, and probably in a half an hour, I located all 4 stakes. And he tried to give me money. I didn't want money. It was no big deal. I was happy to help, and he said, "Well, I own," and he owns a local restaurant, and he said, "At least let me buy you and your family lunch." So that's what we did. We went and had a great lunch, all for a half an hour of locating some pins. So, believe me, you can make money. You can also, there's people out there that I personally, just myself, not a problem with anybody that does it. There's people who charge to go find people's lost rings and stuff. I don't know. To me, that's just such a personal thing. I'm happy to do it for free. If they're within a close driving distance and stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. And by the way, if anybody says, "Well, I might want to try that," let me warn you. The ring or the piece of jewelry that you'll be looking for will 80-90% of the time not be where the owner thinks they lost it.
What was the statistics?
I'm saying 80 or 90% of the time.
I would say every bit of that. Yeah, I couldn't tell you how many times I got to where I would have people reach out to me and say, they lost their ring and stuff, and I would say, "Okay, it's not going anywhere, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to sit and think about it really long and hard, and I want you to search everywhere." And I couldn't tell you how many times I didn't have to go look for a ring. And one of the best ones, the lady was like an hour and a half away from me, and I said, I will do it. But it's a heck of a drive, and I need you to check everywhere. I know right in the yard where I did it. I said, "That's fine. I can't come out for almost a week anyhow." It was kind of one of those deals. Well, I got a call, I think the next day or 2 days later, that it was between her front door and her screen door, not in her yard like she thought. So yeah, that happened. I got to where oftentimes I'd go search, and they would come, couldn't find it, and I found it in the sink. I found it here. I found it there. So I just got to where I wouldn't go right out and search. You're right. People think they know where they lost it, and in most cases, they do not.
Yeah, I had a fairly recent experience where a lady I knew from church, she was really upset. Her daughter had taken her grandmother's golden fire opal ring. It was worth several $1,000s. and she'd worn it and played volleyball in it at a local park with other kids and lost it. Told her mama she lost it in the volleyball court, which was, sand court. So I agreed to meet the lady there on a Sunday morning and, search for the ring. And I got there a half hour before she did, deliberately. And I quickly scanned the sand court, and the ring wasn't in that court. So there was a set of swings, just old-fashioned swings with a kind of what do you call it, a rubber loop seat, and bare dirt, of course, underneath each swing from all the feet that scuffed it. And I went over there, and it was probably a good 150 feet from the volleyball court. And I started checking those scuffed out dirt grooves underneath each swing. I got to the second swing and got a nice signal the first time on my first swing underneath that swing. And there was that gold and fire opal ring. Been lost while she was swinging. So the woman drove up, and she starts taking me to the volleyball court. She says, I think it was right over here in this area where she was playing, and I'm just standing there smiling. And she suddenly realized that I wasn't responding normally. She was just talking a mile a minute, and she stopped and looked at me, and I smiled really big, and I held up my finger, and that ring was on, the tip of one of my fingers. And I'm glad my wife wasn't there because this nice lady grabbed me and hugged me and kissed me. But the point was, it was 150 feet from where they thought they'd lost it. So if you're going to look for rings and pieces of jewelry people have lost, be prepared to search a fairly large area. You can start on where they say they lost it, and you can keep making bigger and bigger circles. But don't be surprised if they say I lost it on the right side of the yard and you find it on the left.
Yeah, or don't be disappointed if you don't find it at all. I mean, really, it might be in the house somewhere. It really might, or it might have been lost out somewhere else or in the car. You just don't know. You just don't know.
Okay. All right. So, Mike, can you think of any other places that a person could find good used metal detectors at great prices?
Well, yeah, and something else I wanted to add. There are some. Now, I'll tell you, not to necessarily resell, but I do check Facebook what's the big site that does the auctions?
eBay.
eBay. Geez. I love eBay as a seller because you tend to get out of what something's worth. I don't care if you put it at a penny. There's enough people there. Now, I haven't come across anything, but I have seen people come across things. I'm a member, or I got the app, the OfferUp, which is like people sell stuff. It's like an app you can download for your phone. Let Go, and Mercari that I check pretty often. Now, what I have found is in most cases they are wanting way too much for the detectors. And a few of them I've tried to haggle with no luck yet. But I know people that have picked up some really good detectors at really good deals. Another thing is Craigslist. Craigslist is huge for that kind of thing. And again, I tend to come across everybody wanting way too much for their used detector. But, again, I do know people that have come across good prices. And if it's something I'm really interested, I'll reach out to them and just say, hey, I think that's too high. And I have not struck up a deal yet where I'm satisfied. And I'm an honest, fair guy. I mean, I've literally, I know people that'll haggle just to haggle. They don't care if it's a great deal. I've literally thought, looked at a good used car and kicked the tires and looked under it. I was a mechanic for a number of years and say, okay, I'll give you for it what you want. I think it's worth it. I'm that type of guy. I'm that honest and fair. But so when I say these people are selling detectors too high, they're selling them really high, and I don't quite get what that's about. But there are deals to be had. And another thing, Craigslist, you said taking an ad out in your local newspaper, and that can definitely be done. Craigslist is free, and you can post an ad there that's actually free, and so that's another way to do it. But yeah, that's all I had on that.
Okay. The Craigslist has been, you can run into, you have a problem with people that if you're selling that don't ever show up. They say, I'll be right there. They never show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've had success buying riding lawnmowers, and also got a relic hunting, Indian artifact hunting project that I've been working on doing, which requires a small boat. And I was able to buy an 12-foot aluminum boat in good condition with a brand new trolling motor. It's never even been out of the box for well under $300. And, that allowed me to do this project, because if I had to go out, and buy a new 12-foot boat, it would cost me 4 times what I've got in this boat. And I would have just had to table the project until I could have come up with, something to build a boat fund, so to speak. But I knew how much that I had to put into the project, and I said to myself, well, I wonder if it can be done for this. So I started on Craigslist, and I looked at a lot of ads till I finally found the one that I wanted, and, at the price, and talked to the people, and they seemed like really responsible people, gave me their address and said, come look at the boat, and so I did, and bought it on the spot as soon as I saw it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you, it's a tough game as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to get Bill's opinion on that. I know he done it a lot. Yeah, Adam Sellers said Facebook buy, sell, and trade pages possibly. Yeah. Again, I keep coming across people wanting way too much. Not always, but, maybe not a deal where you're going to turn around and sell it and make any kind of money. But for the most part, I really run across people just wanting too much money. I mean, I've seen prices that have made me laugh. Like, wow, you got to be kidding me. I can't believe they're asking that. And but I would say that's a tough game all the way around, because then you bought it, now you got to sell it as well. And that can be hard, because you're right. Places like Craigslist, I've listed things before and had 10 people going to come out and not one person shows up. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So I'd really like Bill's input on this. I know, I don't know if he was making a living selling used detectors, but I know he sure was wheeling and dealing hot and heavy in them. So
I think that's an excellent area, if you're not trying to, it's one thing if you have a shop and you have all that overhead and everything, but if you're just, want to buy and sell a few detectors and put the profit into your metal detecting fund, as I call it, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another thing, as I recall, when I worked at Garrett, we had detectors that came back under warranty. Maybe they had been in 2 or 3 times for repair. That happened occasionally, where you get one that, took a while to chase down the gremlins in it, so to speak. And the guy would say, I don't want this detector back. So we would take these detectors, and as soon as they were repaired and working properly, we had we put them in a room, and we call them door sales. And that was if somebody walked through the door and wanted a bargain on a detector. That's how we sold these detectors. They could buy this new detector that had been back for repair 2 or 3 times. They could buy it for something like half price, which was a good deal. And usually these detectors, because they'd been used, had a few scratches and things on them, maybe little dings, nothing major. They still looked real good. And that was a way to get a bargain. I don't know if the manufacturers today do any of that kind of thing anymore. That would be something that have to be checked out. Trying to think, there was
Did you lose your train of thought?
Yeah, I was just trying to think. There's over the years I've seen so many people win metal detectors at these organized hunts. Mm-hmm. I guess people tend to call seated hunts now. Me, I was snake bit. I never could come up with the prize tokens with a detector number. I was in hunts with people that would actually win 2 or 3 detectors in one hunt. But that's not really a good way to build your detecting fund. You might get lucky. If you like to do seated hunts, then concentrate on the hunts where they're giving away the most metal detectors. The more metal detectors they're giving away, the better your chances, the odds of you finding, winning one. So let's see. Well, Mike, I don't have a lot more on that right off the top of my head. We put this together pretty quick today.
Mm-hmm. I think we covered everything pretty good. I would like to say when you initially told me that those guys would take a percentage of what they found, you could also get a hold of the insurance companies. I'll tell you, this is something I'm going to work on this week. I actually kind of forgot about this. I want to at least reach out to some of the insurance companies around here and say, hey, would it be worth, if I did put this together, here's my experience, would you be interested? But instead of taking a percentage, I think I would rather have an hourly rate. Because you're going to come across a lot of stuff that you don't find, and you're going to have fuel and everything else. And, if there's a big chunk of something, well, I'm getting my hourly rate. What do I care? It's just an idea. I mean, you could, I'm just saying that you wouldn't have to do it by hourly rate, but I am also, I would think, I was looking for a lady's $10,000 ring one time, and, I actually it was an old house, a really old house, and back behind it, they did grooming. Well, you parked, in his little parking lot off the alley. And so I asked him to hunt his yard, and he said, yeah. He goes, and I'll tell you what, he goes, a couple of years ago, I had a lady lose a $10,000 ring out here. And he said we never did find it. She lost it in the gravel, and she ended up getting insurance for it and stuff. And the reason was, I said, well, yeah, I'll look for it. And, do you still have her contact? And he said, yeah, but she already replaced it and stuff. So what I'm getting at, an insurance company doesn't want to, if they can pay somebody $50 to go out and find that ring instead of, shelling out $10,000, that might get you some calls.
Well, Mike, I'm going to have to kind of rain on your parade here. You can charge by the hour for locating underground pipes and things like that, and that'll work. The insurance companies don't want to do that. They want to give you a percentage of whatever's found. They'd rather pay you 20% of what's found than to pay you $20 an hour or $75 an hour, whatever you tell them. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying it's not likely that you're going to get any hits on an hourly rate with the insurance companies. That's been As I understand it from talking to the guys that do it, that's been the way it's been. But that's not really bad news. Quite frankly, a good commission salesman who works on strict commission, not salary, will make 3 or 4 times what a salaried salesman will.
Real quick, somebody in the room is absolutely agreeing with you. Jamie McCaig says, I cannot imagine an insurance company going for an hourly rate. They are results focused. Unless you had a ridiculously low rate. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know. My idea of it is, though, you just said, and I agree, 80 to 90% of people didn't lose their ring where they thought. Could you imagine how many trips you might have to make before you find? What if it's $1,000 ring? You get 10% and 20% of 1,000. I mean, that's still good, but that might not have covered your costs for all the times you went out and you didn't find anything. But I'm sure it would work out.
Well, Mike, the thing is, they're not going to have you out there hunting $1,000 rings. They'll pay off those in a heartbeat. Mm-hmm. They're going to have you out there hunting $30,000 rings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And if you only hit on, let's say you spend 3 days and you hit on one, you've put 1 day on each of 3 different rings and you find one. What's your cut on a $30,000 ring? $6,000. You see? In other words, I'm saying, that kind of remuneration will more than cover the dry runs. When you figure up the hours you put in and what you made per hour, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, you're right. I could see that. That's a good idea.
The big thing is, don't take the jobs where, if they say, well, this lady lost $1,000 ring, I don't think you're going to get those, because I know the guys that I was talking to, they didn't. They generally didn't even get asked to look or search, excuse me, unless there was more than $25,000 involved. They got, he told me on one search, they didn't find it, but they were asked to search for a $250,000 ring. Can you imagine if you hit on that?
Right.
I'd be happy if the insurance company called me tomorrow and say, will you come out, and hunt this park for a lady lost a $250,000, pear-shaped diamond ring and blah, blah, blah. Will you come out and hunt? We'll give you a percentage if you find it. I'd say I'd go to heartbeat. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. I'm going to put some feelers out locally. And, I'm a little bit concerned about offering to find, how would you go about finding, because I would think insurance companies maybe not insurance companies, but, it doesn't matter how you go about it. What about property stakes? Those can be a real pain sometimes. Do you charge hourly? Do you charge if you find them? How do you do that?
Well, I have a little secret on that one. I've got a good friend who has a surveying company.
Okay.
And I talked to him about locating my property markers because I have an odd-shaped piece of property, and it covers the face of a good portion of it covers the face of a very, very big mountain, a wooded mountain. And it's very difficult to find the markers and things with the undergrowth and all of that. And he told me he can take the plat map and find them by GPS satellite, he says, without ever having to go out on the site. So, what's this property marker location thing is getting really technologically advanced. And what I'm saying is, you could get a surveyor that has this capability to give you the almost exact GPS location of where the property pins are before you even go out on the site with your detector. So that would give you a tremendous advantage. So that's just a simple matter of technology opening up new opportunities there on that particular score.
I gotcha. That's interesting. But yeah, I'm gonna. I actually forgot we had that conversation, Dorian. So I'm gonna at least put some feelers out and see. And maybe I can talk to an insurance company. Maybe I can get a hold of one tomorrow that can give me some information, or tell me, hey,
Right.
we're interested, or we got somebody local, or we don't. I doubt anybody local. Yeah.
And Mike, here's the thing: if you're going to do this, very few people know how to search a house. With all due respect, some of you guys that are listening right now, you may be absolutely hard to beat on the field of battle when it comes to metal detecting. But you probably don't really know how to search a house unless you have spent a good deal of time searching houses. And I'm talking about inside. I'm hoping, Mike, I've been talking about this. I've got a friend who's an absolute one of the top experts in the whole United States on doing that. And he's just recovering from heart surgery right now. And I'm hoping when he gets feeling better and, I'm going to try, he's not going to come on using his real name because he's very, very careful about publicity. But I'm going to get him to come on and tell us how to search a house. And I think you'll be amazed at the stories he's got. Let me give you an example. He goes around to houses in a big city that have been condemned to make new roadways and things. They're going to bulldoze the old houses down. A lot of these are old row houses, three-story brick, and so on. And after the city boards them up, he'll pry loose a piece of plywood and go in the house. And he goes through that house, and he knows how to search baseboards and stairwells and everything for where people hide money. He was telling me about one. He got up in the attic, and he crawled around the attic and hadn't found anything, and finally crawled to where the roof came right down to the floor joists, and he saw there was a little bit of a drop-off that he couldn't see because his head wouldn't fit back in there. The roof was too close to the floor joist. So he reached with his hand, he reached down into this little drop-off area there at the end of the attic floor between the joists, and he felt a book. And he grabbed the book and pulled it out, and it was an old family Bible dating back to the 1800s. And when he opened it up, two $20 gold pieces fell out.
Wow.
And that'd buy a pretty good detector, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you buy probably any detector you wanted, I'd assume.
Yeah.
Just about. Yeah, wow. I've heard of stuff being found in houses and in walls and everything else. I know it happens.
This is by the way, this is he walks a particular big city dump site on a river. He's been walking it for over 20 years. Walks it 2 or 3 times a week because the big waves from the boats are constantly changing the shoreline. And he's picked up over nearly 7,000 silver coins by eyeball. He is one of the absolute top experts in the United States on finding treasure without a metal detector. Now, don't get me wrong. He's very proficient with a metal detector. Super water hunter has found thousands of dollars in gold rings, gold jewelry and stuff, So he's not lax in that aspect. But I've never seen anybody that could find more with their eyes than this man can. I walked right along with him looking for coins, and I cannot match him. I'm pretty good at spotting things on the ground. If he and I and say 20 members from the local treasure hunting club went out and walked the same beach, he would find the most coins and I would find maybe a third as many as he did, and I would have more than twice as many as anybody else. That's about the way it would probably work. There's a real skill to it, and like I said, I think he would be a fascinating guest, and we'll just have to accord him the right to use an alias to get him on. But he's getting up there in years, and I hate for this information not to be made available to the treasure hunting community before he passes.
Real quick, Jason said, wasn't it a fact that people back in the 1800s didn't trust banks and preferred to hide money in their walls and behind cellar stones? I can add to that a couple things, and then one of the best things I've ever heard came from Dorian on this, also in Fence Post. That's not what he told me. I'm going to let him tell you here in a second. I'll tell you a real good one that came to me from somebody else was chimneys. Behind a stone in the chimney. And at first it took me a second to get it, and then the light bulb went off. Think about it. How many houses burned down in the 1800s here in the United States? I suspect it was a lot. I often, when I'm hunting field sites, and I know Bill and everybody else who hunts field sites, and Amanda's in here. Amanda, matter of fact, we talked about a little bit last night on the podcast. We find melted metal. A lot of these places burned. They were heating with oil and firewood. If you don't think a fireplace is dangerous, try to get insurance for a house with a wood burning stove or fireplace. It's hard to get covered, very hard. They're considered very dangerous, and back then that's all they did. So, how many times have you been driving and seen just a fireplace standing? That's why they put their coins in the fireplace. And I know a gentleman who told me that although he'd never found one, his hunting partner had been doing a lot of years before he did, had found either 2 or 3 different times found gold coins in a chimney. And I mean like behind a stone in the chimney. I'm not talking about down in the chimney or, stuff like that. So, yeah, but Dorian, you just recently, I haven't had a chance to search yet, but tell them about the barn. About the barn. Mm-hmm.
The barn.
Okay, let me I love it. I'll always give you credit for it, but I tell people all the time, when you think, I'll tell you something too. Somebody once told me is sit in their house, sit in different rooms, look out the window and get an idea. But how easy would it be for somebody to be in your woods and you not even know they're there and watching you burying your coins, or through an open field or something like that? I think one of the best I've ever heard that came from you, Dorian, was right inside the barn, the barn door. Now you're out of the elements, you're out of people's view. You can turn around, shut your barn door. I think that is a brilliant place. If I had a place, if I was going to cash money, that's exactly how I would do it right there. And I had a barn, which all them places had barns back in the 1800s.
Yeah, and see that, let's mention the fact that the barn had a dirt floor. So when you dug up your jar of coins and reburied it and then just kind of, stomped the dirt down and scuffed it up a little bit, it looked just like the rest of the barn floor. You couldn't tell anybody had been digging. So that
right. And it's always getting traveled over.
Right. But Mike, I don't want to get too far off topic here, but you mentioned behind stones in a cellar. Actually, the number one place to find buried money in a cellar is in the dirt floor. And very few metal detectors will go to the trouble to dig out an old cellar and so, to where they can detect that floor. And if they were willing to put forth the effort to do that, probably it wouldn't, I would guess there's a really high chance that you'd find a cache out of at least one out of every 4 or 5 cellars you dug out. But again, we want it easy, and we don't want to put that much work into it because there might not be anything. And I was watching these guys up in New England a couple years ago. They are famous, these two brothers, for finding colonial copper coins worth thousands of dollars. And you talk about hard workers. They go out and find these old stone foundations, and they start digging from the stone out away from the house about 3 feet wide, and they dig it down a foot and detect everything they dig out, and then they detect, the bottom of the ditch they've made. And that's how they keep coming up with, incredible colonial copper finds because of all that shovel work. See how many other people had gone over the same foundation and found nothing. So, that person that goes the extra mile, it's just like you say, Mike, about digging everything. That does get you some really good finds if you're willing to do that. Most people don't want to dig that much junk, though, to get a good find.
Right.
Most detectors expect a good coin, a good signal, at least 1 out of 3. If you cut 2 pieces of junk, and then the third one should be a coin. If you told somebody, well, it's like this. You might dig 100 pieces of junk on this site, but if you get a coin, it's going to be a 1700s, and it could be a rare one. You see?
Right.
So,
absolutely.
So the guys that do that, and they dig that 100 signals, and they come up with these rare coins, and we see them on the magazines and everything, and great finds and all of that. Ask George Kinsey about some of his rare and best finds. How much work did he have to do to get those? It's not that you can't walk onto a site once in a while and find a really nice find right away, but you're not going to do it continually. It's almost like picking a winning lottery ticket.
Right. Yeah. I think, to kind of get it back, I think there's many ways that you can make money at this hobby. And if you caught the beginning, we started this show late. I was having computer issues and everything. Everything was a mess. And there were 2 different topics, and we were trying to decide which one, and we chose this one, and there's another one we're going to, and I want to cover that one soon. But, if you caught that, I don't think there's anything wrong with selling your finds, and we're not going to talk about this. We're not going to go into details of it, but what I want to say is that if you want to sell your finds to fund the hobby, I think it's a great thing. And let me tell you where I'm coming from here. Many years ago, I would have thought that I didn't agree with it. Now, I didn't judge. I didn't give anybody a hard time. But if you were in it to sell your finds, that you just not somebody that I particularly would want to hang out with. But let me tell you where it all changed. I'm the type of person that I'm more likely to donate my finds. After talking to people, being involved in discussions, I don't think you'll ever see me donate anything to a museum. The majority of them, your stuff can be sold, it can be lost, it can be destroyed, it can be thrown away. I'm not taking that chance. I work too hard. It means too much for me. But we're only here for a short time. I mean, that large scent and that case of really cool finds that came from a ghost town, that's going to last thousands of years cared for properly. And, we're here for a short time. So if you can find somebody that's interested in something or a whole collection from a site or something, sell it. Let somebody else enjoy it. Let them pass it on. Let them add it to their collection, and it, most likely be sold on again and again. I have no problem with that now, and I actually 100% support it and understand why people would sell their finds. I know people who collect stuff, and they have finds, and they literally take it home and throw it in a bucket. Or they've got buckets sorted. I throw my large cents in this one. This, here's my copper. Here's my, and they don't even tell you what site. They don't know which site they pulled that off. I would much rather see you put all that from that ghost town that's pretty much unknown, put it all together and put it up for sale, and let somebody buy it who will cherish it and display it. So I have completely changed on all that. Over the years, 100%. Dorian, we're getting towards the end of the show. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Can't think of anything earth-shaking at the moment.
Okay, I think we did great. I think you covered a lot of great things. I had never heard the idea of reaching out to insurance companies, and I think that's a great thing. And I know you're not in chat, but Katie Yeary, Jeff and Katie have been in chat quite a lot, and love having him in here. And Jeff's a good sport. We team up on him some and give him a hard time. Great people, and I really hope I can help them grow into being accomplished detectives. They're very new to it, but good people, and it's, they're dedicated. I know Jeff gets out a lot and into the histories, just not quite there yet on the finds, but it takes time. You got to pay your dues. But what I wanted to say is Katie works for Progressive Insurance, and so I think she's going to do a little asking soon for us about, insurance companies, if they would be up for something like that. So that's a great thing. And something else Dorian, you missed a super fun podcast last night. I don't think you tuned in, did you?
No, I was up to my ears writing an article for Dirt Digest magazine.
You better be, mister. So I got on, Gypsy was traveling, so I got on with Amanda and Matt, and we did the show that you and I talked about the other day, that I wanted to talk about how to approach a big site and all that kind of stuff, and listen for the ground to change and all that, and for deep iron, deeper finds. Well, anyhow, Matt started talking about how his friend found a wax seal. Well, later in the show, we figured out it wasn't a wax seal. It was Tim had messaged him back and said, no, it wasn't a wax seal. It went to an old saw. It was like a metal on the saw. I forget what they called it.
I know what you're talking about exactly.
But we started talking about wax seals, and I thought, boy, how cool would that be? It got me thinking, like, when's the last time I wrote a letter? I couldn't tell you the last time I used anything but email. And how cool would it be to send somebody a letter with a wax seal? Well, we got into this big conversation, and Katie and Amanda both still write letters. Katie's actually even in some groups and stuff, and has some pen pals. So we got to talking about it. Well, now we have a spin-off group of All Metal Mode, and we're going to keep it small. We're not going to publicize it like crazy. We will on the show and stuff like that. But it's Dirty Letters All Metal Mode group. And if you want to get involved in our little pen pal group, now understand there's not really dirty letters. We're not writing dirty letters back and forth, anybody.
Well,
But we called it, Katie came up with the name because we're all detectorists. Detectors get dirty. I love that.
yeah, you had me worried there for a minute, Mike, because Katie said the other day on the All Metal Mode group page there that that she sent her husband to a cat house, and I was saying he was
right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying he was in the doghouse. She said no. She sent him to the cat house.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
So you scared me there when you said dirty.
No, I mean, Katie and I talked about it. I talked with Amanda today as well, and we all agreed that rule number 1 is no, nothing dirty. You will be banned and everything else. But I do like the title because we all get dirty. I mean, detectors get dirty and muddy and everything. So I love the title. Katie said it, and I'm like, yep, nope, that's what it's got to be. Katie's just said she had to Google what a cat house was.
Oh.
So if anybody is in...
Tell her that may be that she is a paragon of innocence in this present evil world.
Yes, she is. She's a sweetheart too, and Amanda. But I'm really looking forward to this. I want to, makes me. Anybody I think metal detectors would like to find a wax seal. Well, I would love to find a wax seal even more now. How cool would that be? But, Amanda, I think it was Amanda saying it. I don't know if Katie has or not, but Amanda will get old antique and older postcards and send them to people and stuff as well. And I thought, how cool is that? So we started a little group. I know that's not metal detecting related, but if you would like to be in our little group and receive a letter now and then or write a letter, join the little group, and we're going to start a little pen pal group and all metal mode pen pal group. So yeah, there you have it.
Well, that's kind of neat, Mike. I'll tell you what, I've got a whole stack of 3-set postcards unused from World War II that was handed down to me
Are
from
you serious?
I do, and I would donate those, and we can use them as prizes for somebody writes a best letter or something like that. If you want to do something like that,
huh? That would be awesome. Yeah, maybe we can do so. Or why don't you join our little group and be a pen pal? You probably don't have the time, do you?
Well, I don't know. If you saw my handwriting, I've typed so many books and things on my computer now, I'm becoming unable to do normal handwriting. It looks like something an 8-year-old is doing.
Dorian, I got to tell you something here because this fits right in with that. I was messaging with Katie and Amanda earlier, and our big thing is safety. We want to make sure it's safe and nobody's getting unwanted letters, and especially with the title, we want people to understand you cannot write anything offensive or inappropriate. But I was telling them both in a group chat, I said, but my handwriting is so bad, and my handwriting's always been bad, but then I don't write anymore. You're right. And I said, you two might wish that I did write something dirty rather than my handwriting. You might need a shower after you see my handwriting, but that's okay. It'll put me in practice. I think it's sad that we've lost, people have lost that and nobody writes anymore. So,
yeah, that's something you talk about a treasure. Have you ever taken time to look at these letters, copies of the letters that our founding fathers wrote?
Yes, some of them, and they are beautiful and eloquent.
Yeah, how did they, I don't think I had a teacher that could have taught me how to do that. That handwriting is so beautiful, and they used quill pens.
Right. Yeah, how cool. They're just they're works of art. They really are. I agree. Some of them are just so beautifully written.
Absolutely.
Bill said cardcow.com in context. Check it out. I'll have to check that out. But I want to get some old postcards. And, I was talking to them both earlier. How cool would it be to find some antique paper and stuff to write on and different things. I think so. I don't have a lot of time, but boy, I can sure take a minute and drop a postcard in the mail and stuff like that, and write a letter now and then. So I think, I don't know, it's really got me excited. And
I don't even know what a postcard would cost these days.
I don't either, to be honest with you. I don't even know how much a stamp costs nowadays, to be honest with you. It's been so long. We pay all of our bills online. She gets receipts right away. I couldn't tell you last time I mailed anything. And, I think it was Katie earlier said, I want to get something I love getting something. How did she say it? I think she said, I love getting something in the mail besides bills. And how true. That's all we get is bills and stuff in the mail. So I'm really excited, and I don't know. I've never even thought about it, but it's something I'm looking forward to. So if anybody wants to join in the group and get involved, what a great winter project or summer project for me. When it's so hot out, to take 10 minutes and write a quick letter and drop it in the mail. I think it's a great idea. So. I'm a little concerned. I'd like to see some men in there. I'm feeling a little feminine right now. I'm going to be honest with you. It seemed like I'm as excited as the women, and no men have really gotten excited about it yet. So we'll see.
Part of that is probably the same thing I voiced earlier. The guys are feeling, a little bit challenged in terms of the quality of their handwriting.
Right. Without a doubt.
Yeah. It's just not taught anymore. You had to, I remember having to take handwriting and getting a C- in it in school. And, there were higher standards. I finally solved my cursive problem. I print. When I write, I just print. Because my cursive was just not that readable. That's one of the big problems when we've been researching Civil War diaries. They contain such wonderful leads on places to hunt, but trying to interpret the writing, because these were farm boys that were, a lot of them were keeping these diaries, and they had trouble with spelling. They had trouble with their handwriting, and trying to interpret what they're writing can be almost like reading a foreign language. But if you can, it pays off big time. And I guess there are certain people that seem to be gifted in being able to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. So Jeff said, I'm excited to make fun of you in the group, Mike. Well, I've got it coming from Jeff, because I sure give him a rough way to go. But Katie come right back and she said, Jeff is going to be writing letters too. Just you wait. Now, wow. I don't know their situation completely, but if I had to guess, if Katie says he's going to be writing letters, he's going to be writing letters. But we'll see. Yeah. Yeah, if he's smart, I think he'll be writing a letter. I hope I get Katie, do me a favor, make him write an apology letter for making fun of me and for wanting to write letters, and make him write me an apology, sweet, nice letter and send to me. I love giving. They're like us. They love to joke and laugh and have fun, and they're good people. I'm glad they found the podcast and stuff. So. They add a lot of fun to it. So, okay, well, that's all I've got, Dorian, unless you thought of anything else or want to talk about it.
We've covered a lot of stuff tonight, but I hope some of that was helpful, got some people thinking, and because thinking is good. Thinking is good. Let me just finish up with this comment about thinking, Mike. I've seen a pretty good share of the old guy treasure hunters that have done it all their lives, adult lives, and I don't remember in the last 44 years of ever seeing one of them, a single one of this group of professional treasure hunters that I knew. Most of them lived to a ripe old age. Most of them died in their mid to late 80s or 90s. And I never saw a one that showed signs of dementia or Alzheimer's. And I have to believe that it's got to be partially due to the fact of how active their minds were their entire lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I go through spells where I'll play games on my phone. I don't get a lot of time to do it, and it's been weeks now. I deleted the last game I had, but I will only play games that are that are supposed to be good for your mind, like word games and stuff like that. I don't play, I don't spend hours playing a game that you're not getting anything from it, but there are some really good word games and riddle stuff that I will play now and then. I believe in keeping the mind active. Yeah. On the other hand, I'm a fat guy and I need to get out more metal detecting and walking, because it doesn't matter if your mind's still good if you die young because you're fat and out of shape. So there's that.
There's that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up then, at least from this end. And
yep, let's wrap it up. Let's do it. I think it was a good show, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And I believe next week, Tuesday night, I'm pretty sure we're going to have Keith Wills on talking. Him and Dorian know how to read treasure signs. And that is the plan as of right now. I believe Keith said he could next week. I'll have to double check with him, or if you get a chance, Dorian.
Okay.
Treasure story. We forgot the treasure story. Do you even have one, Dorian, lined up?
Oh yeah. Treasure story. Yeah. There was a famous. Let's see. I don't think we've used this one. I haven't talked about the Steinheimer treasure, have I?
No. If you did, it was quick or something. I don't remember ever hearing about it.
Okay. This is a Texas treasure. It's legitimate. There was a silver miner. His silver mines were in Mexico. His name was Steinheimer. Last name, forgot the first name. Got it in my file. But anyway, he came back to his home. Was near Belton, Texas. He had a little ranch just outside Belton, I believe. And supposedly somewhere, I think within 25 miles of his home, his mule train full of silver bullion that he was bringing back from his mines in Mexico, and his Mexican helpers, were attacked by Comanche Indians. And they were all killed. And supposedly his treasure was never found. So I read the stories in the treasure magazine. See, one thing we had back in the 70s, we had a lot of magazines that published stories about lost treasures. So if you get any of those older magazines, 60s and 70s, and you'll find a lot of stories about known lost treasures. Excuse me just a moment. I'm going to have to have a drink of water here. So I didn't have enough information to drive all the way to Belton and to hunt for Steinheimer's treasure out in the boonies there, out in the wilds of Texas. But there was an area about 75 miles from Belton. It centers around the little town of Millsap, Texas, which is west of Fort Worth, if you're looking for it on the map.
Okay.
And what we did was, I was in the landscape construction business, and we would go down there and buy these beautiful live oak trees that grew wild on the ranches. We would buy these trees from the ranchers, and then we would dig them and bring in a big semi when we got a load and haul them back to Dallas and use them in our landscapes. And it was a lot cheaper than buying them from the local nurseries. They cost us 3 times as much if we bought from the local nurseries. And excuse me. Anyway, so I was down in that area a lot. We also, some of the ranches had this beautiful type of boulders, rocks, that were shot full of holes. They were white, almost chalk white, and they were honeycombed with holes, and we called them honeycomb rock. And we would buy these honeycomb rocks for about $3 or $4 a ton and take them back to Dallas and sell them. Of course, we had the transportation costs back to Dallas, but we'd sell them for about $300 a ton. Excuse me. Use them in our landscaping. Pardon me. Ate some popcorn earlier, and I got a little bit of a hole stuck in my throat. Anyway, talking to one of the ranchers that we were digging trees on his place, and we got talking treasure hunting. And he told me about a place above, it's on the edge of a bank going down to a big creek. And there was a tree there on his property that kept continually getting struck by lightning. And he said there was a spike sticking out of the tree, and then finally the lightning just caused the spike to kind of dissolve, just left a hole where the spike had been in the tree. And he said there was a pile of rocks at the base of the tree. Well, I remembered from my Steinheimer's file that those two things were supposed to be part of how Steinheimer marked where he buried the silver just before they were attacked and killed. So I got really interested and asked him if he would show me the tree, which he did. And sure enough, there was a spike hole, still had rusty, pieces of rust from the spike in the square hole. Railroad spike type of looked like. Anyway, there was a pile of rocks about 18 inches high, rocks as big as grapefruits, some a little bigger, and they were kind of arranged in an east-west pattern, and they bulged out in the center, kind of came to a point at the base of the tree and then on the other end of the rock formation. So got permission, we started digging because these were the prime markers for the Steinheimer treasure. Now, it was 75 miles from where it's supposed to be, but that could be the reason why it had never been found. So as I got digging, opening the hole, you could see clearly the marbled soil that had once been dug, and we actually could define the edges of the hole. It was a hole about 10, 12 feet across. And we dug down, got down about 8 or 10 feet, and I was absolutely sure that we were going to find the Steinheimer silver at the bottom of that hole, because anybody that dug a hole that big had to be hiding something of a considerable quantity. And I think there were supposed to be about 20 mules full of silver bullion, and each mule could haul 200 pounds. So that's quite a bit of silver. And we got down about 8 or 10 feet, and suddenly it was like the hole had just moved over towards the creek. You could see the line of where the two lines that define the sides of the hole. It just suddenly, it's like the lower half of the hole had moved, had slipped, and everything had moved to one side and had actually gone down into the creek. So I thought, okay, this is a complication, but not, an impossibility, until I found out that immediately below that place, there was 30 feet of quicksand in the creek. So whatever was in that hole had slipped to the side and gone down into that quicksand and was at the bottom of that 30 feet of quicksand. and I suspect it's still there. So you might say, I found and lost the Steinheimer treasure.
Right.
How's that?
That is good. Dorian, I got to be honest with you. I think you did tell that one. That's okay, because I'm not positive. Evidently I'm not playing enough word games, because I'm not 100% positive you told that story.
I don't think I told it to the group. Does anybody in the group remember me telling that one?
So that would take heavy equipment to get that. I wonder if the owners would let you.
Don't know who owns it.
That'd be a lot of work.
Yeah, I would have to. I think I could find the site because it was right on the main road between two cities out there. I could probably find the site, but I'm sure the guy was much older than me. I'm sure he's gone now. So who knows what the new owners would say? And I don't know if it's the same in Texas, but here in Kentucky, the Army Corps of Engineers basically controls every creek and river in the state of Kentucky. And to do anything like that in Kentucky, you have to have their holy permission. So, it's probably the same in Texas. So you couldn't even dig in that creek without getting all kinds of permits and everything.
Yeah, that's interesting. Boy, I'd sure like to find that one.
Yep. Well, next time I'll tell you about Jesse James's safe. I know I haven't told that one.
Oh, yeah, no. We've never heard that one.
Yeah, big old 6-foot-high safe. What happened to it?
Ooh, that's cool. That is very cool. Okay, let's thank you for sharing that, Dorian. And we'll do that next Tuesday. Jesse James safe. Ooh, that'd be interesting. I kind of want to hear that now. No, let's call it a night. Dorian, great job. I hope. Something else I want to throw out there real quick. I've been telling Dorian that I'd like to get some shorter shows going. I feel like, most of our shows are 2.5 hours. We've pushed 3-hour shows. I'd really like everybody's feedback on that. Sometimes we just can't help it, but I worry that week in and week out, we're doing these really long shows, and I feel like sometimes we're losing people and stuff, partway through the show. So if you got a second, reach out to me and let me know what your thoughts are on it. You're not going to hurt my feelings or anything, but I would definitely like some feedback. Dorian, thank you again. I had a great time. Thank you to all the listeners that stuck around and had great time in chat with everybody tonight. And thanks for tuning in.
All right, Mike, we look forward to next time.
Absolutely. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.